Welcome to the season 2 of the India Energy Hour podcast. The India Energy Hour podcast explores the most pressing hurdles and promising opportunities of India's energy transition through an in-depth discussion on policies, financial markets, social movements, and science. The podcast is hosted by energy transition researcher and author Dr. Sandeep Pai and senior energy and climate journalist Shreya Jay. The show is produced by multimedia journalist Tejas Dayananda Sagar.
India's wind energy sector has never had a breezy year for close to a decade now. An early mover in the green energy space, wind energy players relied on tax benefits for initial growth. But as incentives and subsidies faded, so did the fortunes. Recently, in another major policy shift, the bidding regime for the wind sector would undergo significant changes. To talk about the past, present, and future of the wind energy sector, we spoke with Mr. V Giri. He is the Secretary General of Indian Wind Turbine Manufacturers Association, the industry lobby body for wind turbine makers. Giri has held senior executive positions in several sectors, including foreign wind energy majors. He has been associated with Indian Wind Turbine Manufacturers Association since its inception.
Welcome to the India Energy Hour, Mr. Giri. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I must say this is in some ways our first full-fledged episode dedicated to the wind energy sector of the country. And who better than you can guide us through the past, present and future of this very important sector in the green energy transition of the country.
Thank you, Jay. You're kind and generous, but I hope I'll come somewhere near your expectation with your friends and I don't let you down.
I know you won't. So let's quickly first start with you. I know that you have a very interesting persona and a career, but I would want our listeners also to know about you. So can you describe your journey? Where are you from? What did you study? Where all did you work? And how did the wind energy sector happen to you? And then subsequently the association as well, which you have been part of and spearheading for quite some time.
Thank you. My name is Giri, of course, and as you can see with my gray hair, I'm a senior citizen, and I come from Andhra Pradesh, which is southern India, and God has been very kind. I'm born in a family of thought leaders, lawyers, and national leaders and freedom fighters. That's the background I have, and I'm the only son of my parents. With a result, I have been a backbencher all my life in school and college, and I did my schooling from Chennai and post-graduation in economics from Loyola College, Chennai. And thereafter, I went on to do my post-graduation in management from XLRI, Jamshedpur. And then onwards, once I passed out of Jamshedpur, I worked for 8 years in Tata Steel, which is a normal thing to do for any student passing out of Jamshedpur XLRI. And I left Jamshedpur because I found it very closeted and then was not able to grow. So I worked for 19 years with a group called the RPG Group, which is the RP Goenka Group. I've been involved in various industries of there for over 19 years in the field of fiberglass. I've been with fertilizer. I've been with tire cord and aquaculture. So that adds up to about 27 years. And I'm happy that in the last 26 years, I'm involved with wind energy. I think it's kind of funny that when I was wanting to leave aquaculture and when I told my group HR that I want to leave, I was working in aquaculture, which was just a 1 year stopgap. I had 2 jobs on hand. One was to continue with aquaculture. The other was to go and be in London with a company in Lagos to look after logistics for an oil company ferrying and looking after logistics of ferrying boats for the men to work off field. And then from nowhere, a junior of mine whom I had never met in my life, from management school, he calls me up and he says, "Hey, Giri, there is a job of the CEO of a wind energy company. Would you like to join?" I know nothing about wind, so I told this guy, "Sorry, I won't be interested." He said, listen, let me send you a bunch of papers, have a look at them, read them. And if they call me for an interview, attend, and then let's see what happens. So I read a few parts of the thing being what's a nacelle and the power, what's a blade and the generator and so on. Got myself prepared. As I told you, being a backbencher, I try to mug up whatever I can. And then I got interviewed by some local consultant who then put me onto these guys in Denmark. And at that time, it was not very popular to have all these VC calls and whatnot. So those guys, after they speak to the consultant, took the risk of calling me over to Berlin in Denmark. So up there, I went and met with these guys. I don't know, I can't still figure out as to what made them get interested in me. And I got hired. So I joined a Danish joint venture company into wind in Chennai with a small 250 kilowatt turbine. And when I joined this company, it was a joint venture, we had 6 turbines in all of 250 kilowatt. 5 of them owned by the company itself and 1 to a customer. That means we had just 1 customer. And I worked with them for about 15 years. And in that 15 years, we were able to cover almost all the wind states. We have today, I think, over 1.2 gigawatts of turbines or 250 kilowatt turbines working in all the 8 states. We then graduated to a 750 kilowatt turbine. I was lucky and I was responsible for introducing Siemens Gamesa into the country. We have over 100 turbines of Siemens Gamesa working. And just about the time I was getting to leave, because the Danish company, the partners moved out and the Indian company was too small to take on higher risks. And at that time, I was almost ready to retire. And I must say, having joined a very small company, I found that association was a great platform for me to figure myself in this large group of these big boys. So I took an interest to become a secretary of the association and later become the chairman of the association. And then I became a founder director of Global Wind Energy Council with Mr. Steve Sawyer. And then that gave me a global opportunity to have meetings, and I was the marksman to give the Indian story to various forums, whether it was in US or was it in Germany or was it in Denmark or is it in UK? And then that gave me the great global exposure. So having my mark as a guy who bit on policy and regulation, and when I was wanting to hang up my boots to retire from commercial life, my fellow members of the manufacturing community, they came and said, listen, we have a small association, and why don't you head that as the Secretary General of the association? So there you are. I'm happy to say at the age of 76, I'm still batting as a non-retiring batsman. And I was in Chennai starting in 2013. I was in Chennai for about 5 years. And I'm happy to say that with the present administration, the government of India, it looks as if it was better for us to be closer home. And Shreya also gave me the invitation to say, why don't you come today? So I moved to Delhi in 2018 and I'm here. So what I think I really want to say is I'm in this sector because I think I'm committed to this. I think it's a sense of passion and commitment, and I don't think the flame is dying out. And we have seen the ups and downs of the industry, and God willing, so far as I contribute and my members feel that I am contributing, I would stay. And then even after I retire, I think I will follow the Bin story because that story has not really begun. And I would like to see the end where the government's plan of net zero by 2070 is really a reality and not a myth. So I could be in my talk, be a little sarcastic or a little defeatist, but one has weathered quite a few storms, and I think we will carry on.
That's great. I will just ask a follow-up on the personal story and then we can move on to the topic. I was just wondering, like, you have played so many different roles, right? You have been in the wind production side, like installation side of things. You've been, in Tata's and the steel industry, I'm assuming, and you have been in different industries. What do you think was the most significant, like, game-changing experience? I'm sure each of these experiences taught you different things, but what would you suggest was like one of the most, from a learning point of view, a great experience, especially when you bet on such a small company? I think it was a smaller company, as you said, to go on and join them. So among all these experiences, which was the most richest and the most, from a learning point of view, the best experience, if you have one?
more than win and taking a risk on joining a very small company and then making it really grow. And I'm happy that in the wind sector itself, the guys who work with me join me at a 3,000 rupees as a laborer. Today are in major MNC companies, be it GE or a Vestas or a Gamesa, working not only in India, but also outside India. And I think, their salaries maybe about, let's say, if they join me at 50,000 rupees a year, today they are earning something like about 30, 40 lakhs. I think I've played a large role in growth of people, and I think I'm rather proud of it. But if you ask me a specific, like an interview, what I think was my cherished moment is when I was working for RPG. Having worked in tire company, I was working in a company making tire cord, which is the nylon that goes inside the tire. So we had our own company called CA Tires, and I was given the marketing portfolio to sell to all the tire companies. So when I went to MRF, which is the largest tire company at that time, one of the things they asked me was, Mr. Giri, you are our competitor. When I buy from you, how do we know that you're going to give us a quality? And how are you going to ensure that you don't let us down on the delivery? Because if we are dependent on you and you don't deliver, about my production will come to a stop. And therefore, no way you cannot sell us tire cord. And give us one reason why we should buy from you. I told MRF, you're the leader in the industry. And if you want to continue your leadership position, you have to use my tire cord. Otherwise, you will lose out. This I'm telling you and giving you an advice when without charging your consultancy. That's number one. Number two, I said, certainly you're testified to say that you're scared that we will let you down. We will not compromise on quality. But if you're afraid of delivery, without checking my management, I would stock at your place 2 months of supply as per the bidding pattern you require. And I would have it deposited with you. We will keep that as a rolling stock. And then you decide whether you want to continue business. And before you do that, come to our factory in Gwalior, in Malanpur. Normally, we would not let a competitor. And without checking with my management, I said, I'll take the risk. I'll take you guys and let me know whether you want me to buy your tickets. So when I called up my director, he said, Mr. Giri, I'm sure you're going to lose your job. That didn't happen. These guys came, and when they came inside, they made only one remark. Mr. Giri, coming inside the Dore plant in Malanpur, once we step inside, we're not so sure whether we are in India or whether we are in Japan. That's the kind of remark they made. And believe you me, Sandeep, we got 2 months stock, much again, breaking all protocols of our commercial requirements, and we got it delivered. A credit limit which was given to them for 60 days. They were so happy. They reduced it to 30 days. And out of 9 players, the tire cord field, though being a competitor, I was the largest supplier to a competitor. And I think that's one thing which I would possibly, I don't have natural unfortunately. If somebody were to listen to the story, I think this would be a repeated story which would come all the way and every time that it comes up.
That's really fascinating. Thank you for sharing. I mean, yeah, wow. I think that's the kind of partnership we need in like clean energy as well, right? Going forward, that can be an inspiration for that sector. Let's get started on the topic of India's wind energy sector. So let's just start with basics, right? First principles. Let's start with the sector. Just lay out a big picture point of view of how the past 2 decades have been for the wind sector. It has seen its share of highs and lows, and mostly on the back of sudden policy changes, if I may. Can you summarize the growth of this sector and some of the challenges that it has faced since its inception till 2023 or till the beginning of 2023?
I think you're again giving me, you're tempting me to go down memory lane. I would say, very frankly, wind turbines or wind energy, I think it's an engineering marvel. I think perhaps this is the only industry which combines civil, electrical, mechanical, and electronics. And an engineering marvel which works in difficult, complex terrain with very little human interface. I think this is something that is fantastic. And then if you go into the history of wind turbines, I would say we owe all our thanks, number one, to that time, which is now MNRE, which was called the Department of Non-Conventional Energy Sources, which was known as DNAs, which became MNES, which became later MNRE. Their cooperation with the Danish aid, which is called the DANIDA, I think they are the ones who taught us what wind turbine is. They set up demonstration plants, a small 55 kilowatt turbine in Tamil Nadu. And then they handpicked engineers from the utility under the ECN program, took them to Denmark, and taught them how to do wind measurement, how to erect a turbine, how to operate a turbine, how to maintain a turbine. I think this holding of Derrida is something which can be written in gold and cast in stone. I think that's the most beautiful thing that happened. And then I would also say the torchbearers or the human service of government of Tamil Nadu, or known as the Tamil Nadu Electricity Board, now known as the TANGEDCO, proactive policies to say, fine, you are installing the turbine, you could use the generated power for your own use. Unfortunately, Government of India at that time came up to say one can use power for their own captive use. And then, of course, you are aware that there was accelerated depreciation of 100%, which later became 80 and then became finally 40, and now, of course, it's zero. There was also 80 and IA benefit where there was a tax holiday. They could take a 3-year tax holiday with the first 10 years of operation. And we found that there are many power-intensive companies like textiles and cement. We invested in wind turbines to future-proof their power costs. I would say in a very basic manner, that if a person were to use their deferred tax to be paid to the government as their upfront money, and that was about 30%, and get the balance of the government. And then they put up the turbine, and within about 7 years, if they are able to recover their investment, their principal and the loan, let's say after about 7 or 10 years, if we take the life of the turbine of about 25 years, after 10 years, other than maintenance, insurance, and some little labor, the power was for jam. So I would say that if a person after 10 years, the cost of power at any point of time was not more than ₹1 per unit. If they did not have a turbine, they would be paying something like about ₹5 a unit for power. And here I think I would just give one example. We have in the south, there's a company called Dalmia Cements, who are a cement making company. Out of 3 plants, they have 1 plant which works purely out of wind park for their own captive use. And while we are talking about power intensive units, there are a number of textile processing units, people having 10,000 spindles, 12,000 spindles. They found again that they were making profits, and profit is not a bad word, and they were able to get the profits by investing in wind turbines. Plus, as a South Indian and as a conservative South Indian as we are, most of the captains of the industry or the owners of small mills, they put up the turbine and gifted it to the daughter. The power that was generated was used by them, but then the turbine was in the daughter's name after the deposition was taken up, so that after she gets married, she has an asset to herself. That should something go wrong, that she is financially secure, that she will sell the asset, use the asset, she can do what she wants. So there was a lot of sentimental attachment to this particular turbine. Now, it's very interesting that today we are at 40 gigawatts as on date, 41 gigawatts. But the first 20 gigawatts came out of this section of investors, the large textile and cement guys, and thousands of small investors put one turbine, one 250 kilowatt turbine. Today, the SECI quote is for a 250 megawatts. Here we're talking about one guy buying a 250 kilowatt turbine, and all he was interested was to ensure that the turbine was installed before the 31st of March so that he can avail his income tax benefit. So these guys are responsible for the first 20 gigawatts that was built in the country. And apart from those guys who are using the turbines for their own capital use, there are also guys who are selling turbines, generating power to the discoms. It was a legal process through the state regulatory commissions who had a public hearing. They took on a spreadsheet, they worked out what is the capital cost, what's the what's the interest cost, what's the PLF, what should be the post-tax IRR, and they arrived at a tariff. And the tariff had a control period, and that was binding on the discoms. And the discoms were happy to buy it. But of course, there were a few laggards who did not pay the generators on time. That's a different story, and it's a very painful story which happened both in Andhra Pradesh as well as in Tamil Nadu. But the fact of the matter is, we had 20 gigawatts built by them. This is a story that ran from 94, and I'm happy to say, again, the lineup of the saga of wind turbine. My director in the innovator company with the Danish guys put up a Micron machine in 1989, and today we are in 2023. It is 34 years old. it's still chugging away power without a change in the blade, the generator, or the gearbox. So I would say going back mid 80s, the engineering was so perfected in the Scandinavian countries. We really have a Indian engineering mouth. Now, in 2003 4, we found that larger companies from abroad, bringing in funds from private equity as well as from pension funds and others, they were wanting to come to India and do business. Of course, they didn't have an appetite for accelerated depreciation because they don't have business in India. But then they still found that borrowing interest rate abroad and the kind of business they would get out of India. And India had a beautiful policy of an automatic route by which investment was easy and they could do 100% investment, and repatriation of dividends was also equally easy, and disinvestment was equally easy. So you had a host of players who came in. And I'm happy to say that they had a grouse. That guys who were sitting in India were enjoying the accelerated depreciation. Guys who were bringing in large funds of money were not getting anything. And I'm happy that my good friend, Mr. V Subramanian, former Secretary MNRE, he worked with a bunch of boys to say that if a person who is getting accelerated depreciation is able to get so much of money, why not we give something for the guy who doesn't require accelerated depreciation? And let's make both of them mutually exclusive. So they formed something called a generation-based incentive. They said, if you generate, you will get 50 paise per unit up to a ceiling limit of 1 crore. And you will pick up that money not less than 4 years, because then you would touch figures, and not more than 10 years, by which time you would have certainly generated and your turbine would qualify for the generation. So the IPPs came larger in number because the GBI kicked in. And they were more interested to sell it to the discoms, but of course they were running the risk of non-payment from the discoms. This story ran very well right up to 2017. In 2017, Government of India, I do not know the wisdom they had in their mind, decided to go for central procurement. To do away with state procurement, they would go for central procurement. And then they decided it not only be central procurement by a feed-in tariff, which will be determined by the Central Regulatory Commission, but then they decided they would go for a e-reverse auction. E-reverse auction is not something new. It has been practiced in a number of countries. I would say it was tried even in China. Unfortunately, I think the mistake the government did was in the year 2016-17, since that was the last year of GBI and accelerated depreciation, we had a record installation of 5.4 gigawatts. Not knowing that things will go bad, we as OEMs, who have to plan at least 18 months ahead for all our supply chain, we planned on doing something like about 8 gigawatts. And suddenly the tap on FID closes, and then the e-reverse auction starts without any chance. I think this is what exactly happened. And then the number of auctions that came was so small, it was a dog-eat-dog story. The IPPs who had money parked in the country, they had to, use it. And then I'm here going to say something which is not so good. Investors from retail and power-intensive users, the IPPs are financial investors. They have no love for power. They wanted to see if their Excel sheet showed them a post-tax IRR of X, they were willing to invest. And then, if they did not get it, put on 2-3 gigawatts, have it valued, and then exit. So when the number of auctions were small and aggressive bids started with the e-reverse auction, the tariffs became so unviable. And then the last 5 years between 2017 and 2022, we have been adding 1.7 gigawatts per annum. And here, I think perhaps I forgot to mention that in India, we have a capacity to manufacture 15 gigawatts per annum. And I am proud to say that the cost of turbine manufactured in the country with a robust supply chain, even before Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India slogan came in with the new government, we had localized so much with engineering skills in the country that even today, as documented both by GIVEC as well as by Bloomberg, cost of turbine is the lowest cost in the world. We are even lower than China. We have such robust supply chain, and we are able to meet international quality standards by which we are able to export to different geographies of the world. With that kind of a thing of 15 gigawatts and chasing 1.7 gigawatts per annum, governments has set up a target of 500 gigawatts by 2030, and we are at 40 gigawatts. In the next 8 years, if we have to reach the target, we need to do something like about 12.5 gigawatts per annum as against 1.7 gigawatts. And the beautiful thing of wind is that we are a low water industry. We install turbines on a footprint basis, and we are absolutely non-polluting, and agriculture can coexist with wind energy. With these plus points, I would say wind energy, as we stand today, we will come to other subjects as you go along with your questions you have laid out. We are really at crossroads. So that's the position we are in the last 20 years, what we should have done and where we are now. Up till 2017, it was smooth sailing. And after 2017, things have been bad. Some corrections are being done, and we will go ahead with the next question.
If I may, ask you further on this 2017 shock that happened to the industry, if I look at from a different perspective, this sector was running on tax incentives for so long. It also became a sector where people invested because it gave them tax breaks. Wind sector at one point in its history was making headlines just because celebrities were investing in it. And that was just because of tax incentives. Do you think that the sector was dependent on tax incentives, tax breaks, the celebrity culture of investing in it to get quick returns? Was the sector too comfortable that it could not adjust to this very little change of going to reverse bidding? By the time reverse bidding was introduced in the sector, the tariffs were at a position which were pretty close to, the FIT tariffs and the reverse bidding tariffs. There was not much of a gap. So, do you think that, the policy might have come as a shock immediately, suddenly, but was the sector not mature enough to absorb this kind of shock?
Number one, celebrities investing in turbines is a hogwash. Unfortunately, Ashwarya Rai or Amitabh Bachchan or Sachin Tendulkar, they made headlines. If you take the first 20 gigawatts that was installed, 70% is for captive. Sale to discount was the second option. Sale to discount came in where IPPs came. Otherwise, it was primarily using for captive use, and I said for future proofing of power. That's number one. Tax incentive, even after it was dropped from 100% to 80% to 40%, it was going on well. And government had the scheme of group captive, where you invest in the turbine instead of just selling it to the discount. You sell it to captive users, or you had the sales tax holiday in Maharashtra where one saw huge investment in Maharashtra. Yes, as a starter, 80 was the final, but thereafter, I think the captive use continued. And in 2017, what came as the shock was that there was no transition. China, when they moved from FIT to e-reverse auction, the transition was with something like about 60 gigawatts was in transition. I think there is nothing wrong in e-reverse auction. The e-reverse auction was wrong with an upper cap. Why do you set an upper cap? How do you draw a line? Like, for instance, how do you determine power costs? Whether it is a thermal or a hydro or a nuclear or whatever, there is a determination of costs. And as you know, Shreya, there is an APPC cost. If there is an APPC cost at 3 rupees 45 paisa, and if we are asking for let's say a fair return of 3 rupees, why should they get a rush? Why should RE be cheap? It's a private sector which is investing into the sector. They are bringing in the money, and you throw it into a reverse auction where, as I said, the auctions were so small. Now let's move away from this and give you small little numbers. SECI 1 to SECI 30. The total amount megawatts filled out is 19,000 megawatts, out of which 15,000 megawatts have been awarded. How much has been commissioned? About 5 gigawatts. They set up the rule of having the auction without any precondition. So far as you had a net worth, you could get into an auction. We said have a reverse auction, but then have a qualifying criteria. Apart from net worth, that they should have the land, they should have a stage 2 clearance on the grid, they should have a tie-up with the turbine manufacturer because they should microsite to say which turbine will work where. None of them were there. That means that the bidder to secure an order went on a Dutch auction, secured the order, and thereafter started looking at where he would put the turbine, which state he would put it up. And the best states were Gujarat as well as in Tamil Nadu. Now, when everybody ran to Gujarat government started up and said, listen, power is a concurrent subject, the land is a state subject. Why should Gujarat give land for power that is produced in Gujarat and transported outside Gujarat? What does Gujarat government get out of it? Therefore, we are not giving the land. What I'm saying is the entire system of the auction without consultation with the states, without consultation as to the standard operating practices outside the country, they just jumped in. And they said solar, which is at 20 rupees, we bought it down to 2 rupees. The Madhya Pradesh Electricity Regulatory Commission, because the PLF is very poor there, it went up to 5 rupees 91 paisa. And then minister, of course, I will not mention the honorable minister's name, said, no, we will stop all procurement from FIT and we will go only with e-reverse auction and we will ensure that we will put an upper cap. And the upper cap killed. E-reverse auction should have certain principles by which you open. I think that was not handled well. And we also showed to them that close bidding at 2 envelope bidding is as good. And it is not something. Close bidding is available for defense as well as for infrastructure. Because defense, which is such a sensitive subject, when you are able to have close bidding for them, why not have close bidding for wind? It is now a reality. And the worst is, this comes, I'm happy to go on record. They are perpetually broke. They are broke and they are inefficient. Why are they broke? Because they are dictated by their political bosses. They have to give free power. If they have to give free power, they have to steal from somebody else. So what did they do? They got the power, they didn't pay the generators. So I would say we got down the power, let's say from 3 rupees 46 paisa in Tamil Nadu down to about 2 rupees 44 paisa. It was supplied. 5 years have passed. Whatever be the quantum of power that has been injected either by wind or by solar. Wind is at 40, solar is at 60. Whatever be the levels of PPA, they're signed. But let us take even the last 5 years. Has that tariff gone down to the consumer in any sector, whether it is domestic, residential, commercial, industrial, has gone down by even 1 naya paisa, 0.1 paisa.
But for all the reasons that you have mentioned, be it, discoms giving free power, hence they want cheaper sources of electricity. And obviously there are inherent flaws with the L1 model across sectors, not just energy, across infra as well. But how else would have cost of wind come down is my question here, because this happened at the time when solar was rising in the country. Tariffs were going down immensely, capacity addition was happening. First, how would have wind competed with solar? Second, if the sector was not so much dependent on tax incentives and was much ready for change, why did this sudden financial trouble happen with the leading companies in the sector? Company by company just went out of business. Some of them packed their business and left the country. What was the reason for that?
As I again said, if you want to have a meaningful business in the country, you forget the model of procurement, whether it is FIT or whether it is closed bidding, you call it what you want. Let me put the wind regime into 3 different buckets. You take the high wind regime of Tamil Nadu and Gujarat, medium wind of Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Karnataka. I will not count Telangana. And then you take Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh as the lower. If you put them in 3 different buckets, without getting into an Excel sheet and getting into the details, I can tell you today, if the government wants to achieve what they want to achieve, at 3 rupees for Tamil Nadu and Gujarat, 3 rupees 10 paise for the second of Andhra, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and 325 for MP and Rajasthan, you will see the numbers coming. Now, why did SECI fail in implementation of projects? The main thing is SECI is totally dependent only on the discoms. As a trading licensee, it's like a mall. Power has got no color. They should sell power to any entity. They sold only to discom. And if the discom did not want it, what they call as the power sale agreement, the PPA was not valid. Today, you find the same IPPs who have quoted 2 rupees 44 paise and 2 rupees 60 paise are surrendering the profits. Let's take the case of solar. In solar, one particular tranche would be at, let's say, 240. The second tranche came down to 2 rupees 30 paise. The buying state says, no, the one at 240, I do not want. I'll buy only at 230. So the 240 tranche lies in cold storage. The point is, the cost of power under APPC is 3 rupees 46 paise or 47 paise, and there are state APPC price. If power from renewable energy sources, be it or solar, is offered lower than APPC, I'm still not able to understand why people should think that wind and solar are cheap. Let's take one example of gearbox. We have 4 companies in India, large MNCs, who can make 12 gigawatts of gearboxes and they're being exported. Out of their 12 gigawatts of production, hardly 0.5 gigawatt is supplied to the domestic requirement. The balance is exported. But our requirement is small. The fact of the matter is, for the 11 gigawatts, castings and forgings for the gearbox is imported from China. Government says, no, I'm going to put anti-dumping duty on castings because it's coming from China. Your cost of gearboxes will go up. Who engineered the anti-dumping duty? L&T, one of the largest companies in India, which sold it to Bracton. And Bracton, what did they do? They folded up business in India and went away. So all I'm saying is that when you want to set up a gear or a casting factory, unless you are able to give a production link incentive to, we are not saying that you need to give production link incentive to the OEM manufacturers of turbines. The backbone of this industry is component supply. And believe me, out of the 4,000 or components that go into a turbine, into this global engineering marvel, more than 2,500 to 3,000 components come from MSMEs. Today, the government talks about startups. Why can't you give something to the MSME sector for them to encourage themselves to indigenize more products? Here, there is no money from the government. Government introduced a coal cess and they call it as the National Clean Energy Fund. They started with 100 rupees per ton on imported and indigenous coal. Today, it is up to 400 rupees per ton. The last figure I had when Mr. Chidambaram was the finance minister was 67,000 crores. The last figure I heard with our present finance minister was like 35,000 crores. This money is to be spent on clean energy. But where is the money gone? The money has gone for deficit financing of the military. That money, if it is properly utilized, I can tell you, Sandeep, it's very important to hear this. A project in Karnataka, under the SECI bid which Shreya was saying, is not happening. The machine is available, the land is available. The grid, both in Koppal and Gadag, right from 2020 onwards, where the bidding took place. Even today, it has not been announced. The IPP has placed the order on the OEM. Since the grid is not open, they are not lifting the turbines from the OEMs. We were 19 OEMs, came down to 14. And today, operational is 5. Many of them are exporting. Our exports last year and this year has gone up by 87%. Our capability, while our turbine higher size is about 3.3 in commercial scale, the gearboxes which we are exporting out of the country is a 7 megawatt size. That's the kind of engineering expertise we have in the country. So I would say you give us a level playing field to work on where we make money, we will do it. But when you are working with financial investors who are looking at an Excel sheet, I would say biggest problem is there is a mismatch on the turbine prices which we want to sell between 7 to 8 crores per megawatt and the requirement of the IPP with his Excel sheet quoting at 2 rupees 50 paise and 2 rupees 60 paise, around 5.5 to 6. There is a mismatch. As I say in Hindi, you can't buy gold for the price of silver. Therefore, many other people have gold out of it. And IPPs go and complain, saying that turbines are not available. We have important.
Let me take your point, and this is very fascinating, and ask you like a connected question in terms of like you did a really good analysis of, what not went wrong, but like what happened in the past. But let's also reflect a bit on where do we go from here. So, recently, we are hearing that government is now trying to give away, get rid of the reverse auction process and trying to bring what you said, the single stage to envelope process. Do you think this will be a game changer for the industry?
It has got some caveats. Number one, you have to change the bidding guidelines. The bidding guidelines will have to have criteria of bidders apart from net worth, as I mentioned, to have qualifying criteria of the land they have, the grid they have, and the turbine which they have thought of. I think these three, I think this is an absolute must. Number two, when the envelope gross bidding takes place, government has now thought of L1 plus 2%. L1 plus 2% will not work. I think what we need to require is a bucket filling mechanism or increase the band L1 plus 2% to L1 plus 10%. Give you a very small example of L1 plus 2%. In Tranche 13 of SECI, the bid was for 1,200 megawatts. A government utility or a government outfit quoted 2 rupees 90 paise, and L1 plus 2% came up to 2 rupees 95 paise, which qualified 3 guys and for a total of 600 megawatts. The balance 600 megawatts shelved. If 600 megawatts are shelved, you take it at a cost of 7.5 crores per megawatt. As OEMs, we have lost an opportunity of 4,500 crores. So you have a target ahead of you. You have a target and you are looking at price band far below the APPC price. So I think government has got to look at that. You want to have no pollution, you want to come to sustainability, you want to come to carbon neutrality, you want to get to net zero, you want to get to 500 gigawatts. And if you are going to be in jump-up market haggling between 1 paise and 2 paise, it will not. I think close bidding is definitely a game changer, but I think they need to look at qualifying bidding guidelines. And I think either they go on a bucket filling method or they increase the bandwidth of L1 to 5% or 7%, which I'm sure SECI will be able to run it out. I think that's one as far as the close bidding is concerned. While we still feel FIT is the right thing to do, but I think it's a couple of moons away. I'm sure before I retire, FIT will come in. But I'm sure close bidding, if it is put up properly, and IWTMA, I would beat my little drum to say we were pretty responsible to get that. Let's run 1 or 2 auctions. They are now talking about 8 gigawatts per annum spread across 5 states. And Sandeep and Shreya, if you permit me, I'm happy that apart from close bidding, they are also now looking at the pool tariff, which means that the discoms will have a fixed tariff. The bidding will be done at the supply level, whereas as far as the sale level is concerned, it will be a determined pool tariff, which will be open to all the states across India and which will be determined by a CRC. And I hope in the first quarter of 2020 calendar year, we would have the first auction of 2,000 megawatts covering 4 or 5 states.
I'd like to, ask, which can presumably be our last question and looks at the future. This particular change in regime, abolition of reverse auction and close bidding, comes at a very interesting time because the industry and the government both are exploring options in the offshore wind sector. And second, as we covered in our journey, it has already been 2 decades for the sector. And there must be a lot of projects which are now looking at repowering. So that is another challenge that the sector faces. So if you can summarize all these things and tell us what the future looks like, what does 2030 looks like for the wind energy sector?
Let me start with a little basics. If we are today at 40 gigawatts, and by 2030 we want to go to 140 gigawatts, it's not going to happen. Let's look at the numbers that can happen. Between now and 2030, 8 years, we put up 8 gigawatts per year. We will come to 64 gigawatts. But then maturity of projects will take 18 to 24 months. Your 8 gigawatts will actually kick in by 2025. So you have 5 effective years. In 5 effective years, let me be liberal to say that out of 8 gigawatts, we will do 6 gigawatts per annum, which is fantastic. I'll get an increment. So you will do about 30 gigawatts between now and 2030. The backlog of SECI 1 to 30, possibly you will get another 7 or 8 gigawatts. So that will come to something like about 37. I'll make it even that as 40. So we are coming to about 80 gigawatts. If you were to touch a 100 mark, we have to open up bilateral trade of power. Government has given ISTS waiver till 2025, and we are asking the government match the ISTS waiver to your period of 2030 and allow bilateral trade to take place using the ISTS waiver. Unfortunately, government has now restricted the banking cycle to every state. Annual banking, which was there, is now being reduced to 1 month. If my simple arithmetic is your generating months is for 5 months in a year, your buyer wants power the entire year. How do you generate in 5 months and not carry forward and supply? You're putting the cart before the horse. So I believe that if you have annual banking, and if the discoms say that they are making a loss by giving annual banking, the generators are willing to compensate that loss and can still make a profit. So I would think bilateral trade has to be number one. Number two, as you correctly said, repowering. Repowering, if you do at least 6 gigawatts can be done in the next 4 to 5 years, which would add another 1 gig. Your bilateral trade can give you about 2 gigawatts per annum. Your repowering can give you about 1 gigawatt per annum. In this entire, whether it is close bidding, e-reverse auction, whatever, the threshold for auction is 15 megawatts. The small guy who put up the first 20 gigawatts has got no part to play. He can't even bid for 5 megawatts. So my point is, you give a special dispensation to the MSME guy who puts up a turbine. Give him, let's say, 10 paisa, 20 paisa over the bidded tariff. You will have 1 to 1.5 gigawatts per annum from the MSME industries because they are committed. They are the sons of the soil. They are the ones who are here. They are investing. They are generating. They are providing employment in their core business. They are also employing people in their wind power station. I think this is an absolute must. We have fought for MSME, and unfortunately, the big boys are getting the ticket, but the MSME guys are getting the call. If an MSME is playing their part on the supply side of making components, of making this beautiful turbine, and they want part for themselves, and they want to invest in part, and you deny them saying that you can't be given because you are an OBC, I think that's not fair. If these things are done, I would say we would be 100 plus by 2000. The last question which you asked, Shreya, on offshore. We do not know offshore. It's not walking on the road. It's swimming in the waters. Let's look at the journey of offshore. 4 years back, they put up an expression of interest for 1 gigawatt. 32 companies outside India have installed. What happened to the UI? Nothing. The potential of offshore in India is about 100 gigawatts between Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. Today, they are wanting to auction 1 gigawatt without a viability gap fund. The cost of power generation through offshore would be in the region of about 10 to 12 rupees a unit. Who will buy it? Gujarat government has said, I will buy it at 3 rupees 45. So Gujarat has now gone to court. Tamil Nadu is saying the same thing. Allow me to buy it at 4 rupees. Balance, you have to take care of yourself. Without viability gap funding, how is offshore ever going to take off? For solar, even today there are PPAs at 20 rupees a unit, and you do not want to have a viability gap funding for a project which is yet to take off. I would say my recipe for the government, like the Danita who put up demonstration projects, let NIWE, the National Institute of Wind Energy, or any other NTPC or ONGC, they are operations for national interests. And ONGC, which knows how to drill oil out of water, they are the guys who should use their platforms to put up turbines. What's wrong if they make a 500 crores loss in a year? Nothing is wrong. The important thing is we do not have learning lessons. Do we have infrastructure to make components in the country? Do we have batteries? Do we know how to lay undersea cables? We don't. What are the issues that will come? Like the ROW issues on land. Let's say tomorrow, 100 fishermen rebel. So I would think it will happen, but government has got to take the lead in demonstrating offshore. So I would think for this conversation, let's keep offshore 10 years from now, but we need to move on. Unless we take baby steps now, it will never happen.
Really, I learned so much. I cannot tell you. Thank you and look forward to be in touch.
Thank you. It was fascinating conversing with you.
Thank you, Sandeep. And Shreya, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the India Energy Hour. Subscribe to this channel to never miss an update. To drop us a feedback, visit our website or write to us at theindiaenergyhour@gmail.com. We are on Twitter. You can follow at TIEH_podcast and get in touch with the two hosts at Shreya_Jay and at Sandeep Pai with double I.